Welcome to The Voter's Voice, where we lay out the bills and you decide if they make sense.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a family in California, working incredibly hard, saving every penny, but still seeing that dream of owning a home just slip further away.
Yeah, it's a tough reality for a lot of people.
Especially if their family history includes generations of systemic barriers, making that dream even harder to reach. Today, we're digging into how California is attempting to, maybe change that picture a bit with Assembly Bill 57, AB 57.
Right.
This proposed amendment aims to expand access to homeownership, but within an existing state program. It's called the Dream for All program. Mm-hmm. And the core idea, AB 57 wants to set aside at least 10% of that program's funds specifically for applicants who are certified as descendants of formerly enslaved people.
It's really fascinating, isn't it, how this bill tries to target these deep systemic issues, but using a very specific mechanism within a program that's already up and running. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to pull out the most important nuggets of info from the sources about AB 57. We're talking potential benefits, the significant challenges, and importantly, the actual cost implications.
Right.
The goal is really for you, the listener, to walk away feeling truly well-informed about what this legislation actually involves.
And there's a really critical piece here you need to grasp right at the start. AB 57, its implementation isn't like a sure thing just on its own.
No, not at all.
It completely depends on a whole separate piece of legislation, Senate Bill 518 from the 2025-26 session.
Mm-hmm.
SB 518 needs to pass and needs to be enacted by January 1st, 2026. And crucially, it has to set up a brand new state agency, the Bureau for Descendants of American Slavery.
That bureau is key.
Without that bureau, AB 57 just doesn't happen. It doesn't become operative.
It's like needing two keys to unlock one door.
Exactly.
Yep.
One half of a legislative handshake.
Yeah.
So with that dependency clear, let's lay the groundwork. Let's look at the existing program AB 57 wants to change, the California Dream for All program, or CDFA. This program, it's already part of California's state code, and it was set up to provide what are called shared appreciation loans.
You break that down a bit, shared appreciation?
Sure. Basically, the state helps with your down payment. Big help, right?
Yeah.
But in return, the state shares in some of the profit, the appreciation, when you eventually sell the home. And this is for qualified first-time homebuyers here in California.
Got it.
The program itself, it has some pretty big goals, boost homeownership rates overall,
Right.
help families build wealth, reach as many households as possible, and crucially, make sure the fund itself can keep going strong for years. Sustainability.
And that sustainability point is absolutely vital because, how well these loans perform, that directly impacts the fund's ability to help the next group of homebuyers.
Makes sense.
The way the CDFA is set up financially is really designed for the long haul. It's continuously appropriated, meaning the funding is ongoing, and it works on a revolving basis. Yeah, so all the loan repayments, including that share of the appreciation we talked about, they get deposited right back into the fund.
Okay, so it replenishes itself.
Exactly. It's meant to be self-sustaining. And that's key to its really ambitious goal, trying to eventually provide up to $1 billion a year for first-time homebuyers.
Wow, $1 billion.
Yeah. And the whole thing is managed by the California Housing Finance Agency, CalHFA.
Okay, so that's the foundation, the Dream for All program. Now, let's get specific about how AB 57 proposes to change it and who it's changing it for.
Right.
As we mentioned, the absolute core is this mandate. At least 10% of the monies in the fund shall be reserved. Reserved for applicants who meet the standard program requirements and are certified as descendants of formerly enslaved people. Mm-hmm. Now, what's really, really important to understand here is that this is not a new program. It's not creating new funding out of nowhere.
That's a critical distinction.
It's a targeted allocation within that existing continuously appropriated fund we just discussed.
So it shifts the conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's less about a new fiscal burden and more about resource prioritization within a program that's already running.
And this brings up that crucial point about how AB 57 would actually work day to day. Its success, its implementation, it's totally tied to that other bill passing and getting set up on time.
The SB 518 and the Bureau.
Right. The establishment of the new Bureau for Descendants of American Slavery. This bureau would have the huge responsibility of figuring out the eligibility criteria for these reserve funds.
Defining who qualifies.
Yes, and this is a very tricky detail. It includes setting a defined historical period for when an applicant's ancestor must have been subjected to enslavement within the United States.
That sounds complex.
Extremely complex,
Yeah.
both legally and practically.
Okay, so let's pivot to the why. Why is AB 57 even being proposed? What are the benefits that proponents are really pushing?
Well, fundamentally, it's framed as being about advancing reparative justice and equity.
Reparative justice.
Yeah. The bill is seen as a specific attempt to address these long-standing economic gaps, the wealth disparities, faced by descendants of formerly enslaved people.
Yeah.
And critically, recognizing these gaps as direct, lingering consequences of historical injustices.
So connecting past wrongs to present economic reality.
Precisely. It's not just about acknowledging something happened. It's trying to address a specific outcome of that history, particularly the systemic exclusion from things like homeownership, which was, and still is, a primary engine for building wealth in America.
Right.
When you look at the data, the wealth gap between, say, white households and black households is enormous, often cited as around 10 to 1.
10 times. Wow.
And proponents argue that denial of access to things like homeownership is a major driver of that gap over generations. This bill tries to zero in on that specific damage.
Okay, so that's the broad goal, the reparative justice angle. What about the more immediate impact, the effect on housing access itself that supporters expect?
Well, the 10% reservation, it directly aims to expand and, maybe more importantly, secure access to homeownership for this specific group.
Secure it how?
By ensuring a dedicated slice of these resources is available. For individuals who, because of those historical and ongoing systemic barriers, might otherwise face much bigger challenges in California's super competitive housing markets.
Okay.
It basically takes all the existing tools of the CDFA program, those shared appreciation loans, help with interest rates, closing cost assistance, and make sure a portion is earmarked for this group.
And looking beyond just getting the keys to a house, what could this access really mean for these families longer term?
That's where the wealth building aspect comes in again. Homeownership, as we said, it's widely seen as the main way people build and pass on wealth in the U.S.
They're a primary vehicle, yeah.
So by making it easier for this group to become homeowners, AB 57 aims to let these households start building equity, accumulating potentially substantial wealth over time. It's directly trying to counteract that historical denial of wealth building opportunity.
So potential for intergenerational impact.
Exactly. If people in this group successfully participate, it could really help break cycles of poverty and economic disadvantage that have lasted for generations, leading to, better economic mobility, more stability. It's kind of like planting seeds for a different economic future for those families.
Those are definitely compelling arguments for the bill's purpose. But, for an audience really interested in policy details, I wonder, are there discussions about whether this specific tool, a housing program set aside, is the most effective way to achieve reparative justice?
That's a great question. And yes, that's absolutely part of the much broader, very complex debate around reparations in general. Is it housing? Is it direct payments?
Yeah.
Education? There's no easy consensus.
Okay.
But focusing just on the challenges with AB 57 itself, what are the big hurdles? The main criticisms being raised?
Right, let's get into the cons.
Well, probably the elephant in the room is the potential for serious legal and constitutional challenges.
Yeah, okay. The legal side.
Yes. That explicit preference in how the funds are allocated, reserving 10% for descendants of formerly enslaved people, it raises big questions under the Equal Protection Clause.
14th Amendment.
Exactly. Both the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment and similar parts of the California Constitution. Classifications like this, based on ancestry tied so closely to race, they face what the courts call strict scrutiny.
Strict scrutiny. Sounds intense.
It is. Imagine the state basically has to prove, under a microscope, that it has an absolutely compelling reason for this policy.
Okay.
And that this specific 10% set aside is the only way, the most narrowly tailored way to achieve that compelling goal.
That sounds like a monumental legal bar to clear.
It's incredibly high. And remember that whole process of defining descendants and setting that historical period, doing that in a way that holds up in court.
Yeah.
That could be extremely difficult, potentially leading to long, expensive lawsuits.
Yeah.
Very contentious.
Wow. Okay. So, major legal question marks. That also brings us to the impact on everyone else trying to use the program, the opportunity cost.
Right.
What does reserving that 10% mean for other Californians, other first-time buyers hoping to get help from Dream for All?
Well, it's pretty straightforward math, really. By setting aside 10% of the funds the pool of money available for all other qualified first-time home buyers gets smaller.
Inherently reduced.
Yes, which likely means more competition for the remaining funds, maybe longer waiting times, or some people who would have qualified might just miss out entirely.
Right.
And just to put a number on it again, if the CDFA eventually hits that $1 billion annual goal,
Yeah.
AB 57 means $100 million of that would be specifically reserved. That's $100 million not available to the broader pool.
So for those other potential buyers, it really does become kind of a zero-sum game within that existing fund.
Within the confines of that specific program's funding,
Fair.
yes.
Okay. And then there's the whole administrative piece we touched on. The bill relies entirely on this new bureau for Descendants of American Slavery being created and functional. What are the practical challenges there?
Oh, they're significant. Setting up a whole new state bureau from scratch. That involves serious administrative overhead.
Like what?
Well, substantial costs for staffing, for one. And you need really specialized staff here.
You mentioned genealogists.
Right, genealogists, historians, legal experts to navigate those tricky definitions and potential challenges. Plus, you need IT systems, office space, and you have to design a legally sound process for certifying who actually qualifies as a descendant.
That certification process sounds like a huge task in itself.
It really is. Think about it. Genealogical verification. It's not just a quick online search. You're talking about potentially needing dedicated researchers, so these historical detectives almost, trying to piece together family lines going back generations, often through records that are fragmented or incomplete, especially for enslaved people. It's an incredibly complex puzzle. It would likely be very time-consuming, very resource-intensive, and potentially quite intrusive for the applicants, too.
Yeah.
Huge hurdles for both the Bureau and the people trying to apply.
Okay, let's tackle the money question directly. This is often where confusion happens. What's the actual cost for California citizens if AB 57 becomes law? Are we talking new taxes, more government spending allocated?
That's a really important clarification. The bill text for AB 57 is explicit. Appropriation, no.
Appropriation, no.
Meaning it does not directly allocate any new state funds,
Yeah.
doesn't create a new tax, it doesn't increase existing taxes to pay for this specific set-aside.
Okay.
Remember, it's working within the existing Dream for All fund, which is already continuously appropriated. So it's fundamentally a redirection or maybe a reprioritization of money that's already designated for that program.
Okay, so definitely no new tax burden from AB 57 itself. But how does it impact California citizens financially then, even indirectly?
Well, the main financial impact on the broader population, especially those other qualified first-time homebuyers, is that opportunity cost we keep coming back to.
Right, the smaller pool.
Exactly. By reserving at least 10% of the fund, the total number of non-descendant first-time buyers who get assistance through this specific program will likely go down, or they'll face tougher competition for the remaining funds.
So it changes how a public resource is distributed?
Precisely. It fundamentally alters the distribution of what is, a valuable public resource, even though it doesn't increase the overall state budget or tax burden directly.
Got it. And while AB 57 itself doesn't have that appropriation line item, the separate bill needed to make it work. The one creating the Bureau for Descendants of American Slavery.
Yeah.
That would have costs, right?
Absolutely. Establishing and running that new bureau will incur significant administrative costs.
Staffing, tech, offices.
All of that. Those are real expenditures, indirect costs necessary for AB 57 to function at all, even if they aren't technically in AB 57's text.
Okay. Stepping back a bit, what about the bigger economic picture?
Well, thinking broadly,
Yeah.
the direct impact of this 10% set aside within one program on the massive California housing market, probably pretty marginal overall. It's unlikely to shift affordability statewide in a big way.
Right. It's a slice of one program.
Exactly. However, if the program is successful in helping the targeted group build wealth through homeownership,
Yeah.
there could be positive long-term economic ripple effects across the state.
Like what?
Things like increased consumer spending from those families, maybe greater stability in their communities, potentially reduced reliance on social safety net programs down the line, and eventually an expanded tax base as their wealth grows.
Interesting. So potential long-term positives.
Potentially, yes. These longer-term benefits could maybe offset some of those indirect administrative costs or the opportunity costs over a long enough timeline and contribute, to a more stable and equitable society overall. But that's a longer-term view.
Okay, so let's try and wrap our arms around all this. What does it all mean? We've seen how Assembly Bill 57 is this really significant, very targeted legislative attempt. trying to address historical inequities using dedicated housing assistance, but doing it within the existing California Dream for All program.
Right. A specific tool for a specific goal.
We've talked through the core benefits proponents highlight, that idea of reparative justice, expanding homeownership specifically for this group, and hopefully fostering intergenerational wealth. But we've also dug into some major drawbacks and hurdles, the potential for really serious legal challenges.
Definitely a big one.
That opportunity costs the impact on other first-time homebuyers using the same limited fund.
Yep.
And the significant administrative complexities, especially setting up and running that entirely new bureau.
Which is essential for it to even work.
And we clarified the financial piece. No new direct taxes from AB 57 itself, that it is a reallocation of existing funds, plus those definite, though indirect, administrative costs for the new bureau.
Yeah, that captures the key pieces. And I think this leaves us and you, the listener, with a really important and frankly difficult question to think about.
Right.
How do we navigate this really delicate balance? On one hand, the pursuit of reparative justice and equity for specific groups, especially groups impacted by these deep historical legacies.
Right. Yeah.
And on the other hand, the broader implications for existing programs for the entire population, especially when you're dealing with limited resources.
It's a tough balancing act.
It really is. Policy decisions like AB 57, they are never simple black and white. They involve these really intricate trade-offs. They demand informed public discussion and really careful thought about all the different moving parts, the intended consequences, and the unintended ones too.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. Tune in again to make sense out of all the bills.